The Imperial survey ship, Glory of Dawn, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. Its captain, Commander Stone, stood tall on the bridge, his blue-tinted skin reflecting the starlight. His six-fingered hand brushed across the holographic display, examining the third planet from the sun with mild interest. Another primitive world for the Empire's collection. Stone muttered, noting the radio signals emanating from the blue planet. The Empire had conquered thousands of such worlds before. It was always the same story. A developing civilization that would bow before their superior technology and join the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. But something was different this time. The sensor officer's antenna twitched nervously as he studied his readings. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures. Their technology level appears inconsistent." Stone dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. "Probably just random variations. Send the standard greeting and prepare the integration fleet." The message they received in response shocked everyone on the bridge. It came instantly, in perfect Imperial Standard language. "Greetings, Imperial vessel. We are Earth, home of humanity. We welcome peaceful contact, but warn you. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force. Choose wisely." Laughter erupted across the bridge. These primitives dared to threaten the Galactic Empire. The same empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. Stone recorded his response with a smirk. "Your bravery is noted. Submit to Imperial rule, and you may serve as equal citizens under our benevolent leadership." The human reply was short. "We warned you." Within hours, the Imperial Council convened an emergency session. The council chamber, a vast hall of crystalline spires and floating platforms, buzzed with discussion. Grand Counselor Vex, the eldest of their kind, raised his withered hand for silence. "These humans show unusual defiance," he noted, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber. "Perhaps we should study them further before proceeding." Admiral Peak, the military commander, stepped forward. His decorated uniform gleamed under the chamber's lights. "Ridiculous. They're barely into their space age. Our scans show primitive chemical rockets and basic space stations. 100 ships will be more than enough to show them their place." In the back of the chamber, Intelligence Officer Mark, a veteran of countless integration campaigns, studied the preliminary reports with growing concern. The energy readings didn't make sense. The technological progression pattern was unlike anything they'd seen before. These humans, they were hiding something. "My lords," Mark spoke up, his voice steady. "I recommend caution. Something about these humans." "Enough," Admiral Peak interrupted. "I will not waste time on the fears of an overcautious analyst. The Council will vote now." The vote was almost unanimous. The Empire would proceed with standard integration protocols. 100 warships would launch within the day. Only Intelligence Officer Mark and 2 others voted against it. As the council dispersed, Mark caught up with Admiral Peak in the Crystal Corridor. "Sir, please." The human's response was too confident. No primitive species has ever responded to first contact with such preparation. Peak turned, his expression cold. "Are you suggesting these primitives could challenge the Imperial fleet? Ships that can shatter planets. Technology perfected over millennia. I'm suggesting we don't know enough about them," Mark replied. Their warning was the typical bravado of a species about to learn its place in the galaxy. Peak finished. "Return to your post, officer. Soon, you'll see how the Empire deals with primitive worlds that forget their place." As Mark watched the integration fleet depart the next day, their silver hulls gleaming in the starlight, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire had just made a terrible mistake. The human's warning echoed in his mind. "We warned you." They would all learn soon enough if that warning had been empty words or the deadliest mistake the Empire had made in 10,000 years of unchallenged rule. The war that would change the galaxy forever was about to begin. The Imperial integration fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's moon, their 100 ships forming a perfect attack pattern. Admiral Peak watched from his flagship, the Imperial Might, as the blue planet grew larger on his view screen. He smiled, expecting another easy victory for the Empire's records. "Launch the warning shots," Peak ordered. "Show these humans our power." 5 destroyer ships moved forward, their massive guns charging up. Green energy beams shot across space, deliberately missing Earth, but striking its moon, leaving massive craters as a show of force. The response was not what they expected. "Sir," his sensor officer shouted, multiple energy signatures appearing everywhere. Hidden bases across the solar system suddenly powered up. The asteroid belt came alive with activity. Ships emerged from the dark side of Mars, from beneath the clouds of Venus, and from Jupiter's moons. The humans had been waiting, hidden in plain sight. "Impossible," Peak whispered. Their scans had shown nothing. How had they hidden so much? A transmission cut through their communications. "This is Admiral Walker of the Earth Defense Fleet. We gave you a chance to leave. Remember, you chose this." The human fleet was smaller, only 50 ships, but they looked nothing like the primitive vessels the Empire had expected. These were sleek, dark vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. Peak laughed nervously. "Still only half our number. All ships, commence standard attack pattern. Show these upstarts the might off." He never finished his sentence. The human ships didn't move in standard patterns. They didn't follow any known military doctrine. Instead, they split into small groups, moving at speeds the Empire's targeting systems could barely track. "Sir, we can't get a lock," the weapons officer cried. "Their ships are. They're predicting our targeting algorithms." The first Imperial ship exploded as a human vessel half its size sliced through its shields like they weren't there. Another human ship released what looked like a cloud of dust, but when it touched an Imperial cruiser, the massive ship's systems went dark. "They're using quantum-entangled AI defense networks," the science officer realized, his voice filled with awe. "Their ships are working together like a single organism." Peak watched in horror as his perfect formation fell apart. The humans weren't fighting fair. They were using the asteroid belt as cover, appearing and disappearing at will. Their weapons weren't just powerful. They were smart, adapting to Imperial defenses in real time. "Fall back," Peak ordered as another destroyer exploded. "Regroup at." "Sir, they're cutting off our retreat paths." The human fleet had somehow predicted their escape routes. Small fast ships darted between the Imperial vessels, herding them like cattle. Every attempt to break free was met with precise, devastating counterattacks. In the midst of the chaos, Peak received another transmission from Admiral Walker. "Last chance. Retreat now, and we'll let you go. Stay, and we'll have no choice but to continue." Peak looked at his tactical display. 30 of his ships were already destroyed or disabled. Not a single human vessel had been lost. His perfect attack had turned into a nightmare. "All ships, full retreat," he finally ordered, his pride shattered like his fleet. As the surviving Imperial ships flowed into hyperspace, Admiral Walker stood on his bridge, watching them go. His second-in-command, Captain Reed, approached with a report. "Sir, should we pursue?" Walker shook his head. "No. They needed to learn, but we don't need to destroy them. They'll be back, though, with more ships. And we'll be ready." Reed nodded. "The quantum nets worked perfectly. They never saw our real fleet." Walker smiled grimly. "This was just a test run, Captain. When they return, they'll think they know what we're capable of. That's exactly what we want them to think." As Earth's ships vanished back into their hidden bases, Imperial Officer Mark received the battle report on the distant Imperial capital. He read it with a growing sense of dread. The humans hadn't just defeated an Imperial fleet. They had toyed with it. The real war hadn't even started yet. The Imperial High Command Chamber was in chaos. Admiral Peak stood before the gathered leaders, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle. The massive holographic displays showed the devastating defeat they had just suffered. It was a fluke. Peak shouted over the arguing voices. These humans simply caught us by surprise. Nothing more. Grand Marshal West, the Empire's supreme military commander, stepped forward. His ancient face showed no emotion as he studied the battle recordings. In 10,000 years, no species has destroyed 30 of our ships without losing any of their own. Then we send more ships, Peak insisted. 1,000 warships. Crush them with pure force. Show them what real Imperial might looks like. In the corner, Intelligence Officer Mark cleared his throat. Sir, if I may, these humans clearly have technology we don't understand. Perhaps we should. Silence. West cut him off. Your caution makes you sound like a coward, officer. Admiral Peak is right. We will crush these upstarts with overwhelming force. Mark watched helplessly as the massive Imperial fleet assembled. 1,000 of the Empire's finest warships gathered near their capital world, their hulls gleaming under the light of 3 suns. It was the largest fleet gathered in 500 years. On Earth, Admiral Walker received the news of the approaching armada with surprising calm. He sat in his underground command center, sipping coffee as his officers reported the enemy's movements. They're doing exactly what we expected, Walker noted. Pride is making them predictable. Captain Reed pointed to the holographic display showing the incoming fleet. They've improved their formation, trying to counter our previous tactics. Walker smiled. Good. That means they're fighting the last battle, not the next one. Are the new weapons ready? Yes, sir. The quantum fold bombs are in place, and the AI swarms are primed. Then let's give the Empire a proper education in human warfare. The Imperial fleet arrived with a tremendous show of force. 1,000 ships filled Earth's solar system, their weapons charged and ready. Grand Marshal West himself commanded from his flagship, the Imperial Glory. See how they tremble before our might, West announced as his sensors showed the human fleet emerging. Only 70 ships this time. They know they're doomed. But something was wrong. The human ships were different from before. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence, like ghosts in space. Sir, a sensor officer called out in panic. We're detecting thousands of small objects coming from the asteroid belt. Swarms of tiny drones, each no bigger than a car, poured out of hidden bases. They moved like schools of fish, flowing around Imperial ships, their coordinated movements guided by advanced AI systems. Launch fighters, West ordered. Destroy these toys. Then the quantum fold bombs activated. Dozens of Imperial ships found themselves suddenly occupying the same space as their neighbors, their matter intermixing with catastrophic results. The perfect formation became their perfect trap. Impossible. West watched in horror as his ships started exploding. No species has mastered quantum fold technology. The human swarm drones attached themselves to Imperial ships, bypassing shields that were designed to stop energy weapons, not physical objects. Once attached, they began taking control of ship systems. Sir, we're losing control of the fleet, his command staff reported. These devices, they're rewriting our computer systems faster than we can stop them. Walker's voice came through on all channels. Your Empire's technology is impressive, but it's stagnant. You stopped innovating centuries ago. Humans never stop improving, never stop creating. That's the difference between us. In less than an hour, it was over. 600 Imperial ships destroyed or captured. The rest retreated in chaos, their neat formations forgotten in blind panic. Back in the Imperial capital, Mark watched the defeat unfold with a sense of grim validation. He turned to his fellow intelligence officers and spoke quietly. The Empire forgot the most important rule of warfare: never underestimate an unknown enemy. Now we're learning this lesson the hard way. As news of the devastating defeat spread across Imperial space, for the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire faced a terrifying question. What if they weren't the strongest power in the galaxy anymore? The real war was just beginning, and humanity was just getting started. 2 weeks after the great Imperial defeat, Walker stood before Earth's United Defense Council. The massive underground chamber was filled with military and civilian leaders from all nations. "The time has come," Walker announced, his voice echoing through the hall. "We can no longer wait for the Empire to attack. We must take the fight to them." Holograms showed the planned invasion routes into Imperial space. Earth's fleet had grown. The captured Imperial ships had been studied, improved, and added to humanity's forces. "Their worlds are poorly defended," Captain Reed explained to the Council. "They never expected anyone to dare attack them." The Council voted unanimously. For the first time in human history, Earth would invade alien worlds. Deep in Imperial space, on the frontier world of New Haven, Imperial Governor White was enjoying his evening meal when the alarms began. He rushed to his command center, still wearing his formal dining clothes. "Report," he barked at his staff. "Multiple ships appearing from—" "Sir, they're coming from everywhere. The humans are here." The Earth fleet appeared from multiple directions at once. But these weren't just warships. Massive cargo vessels accompanied them, carrying something the Empire had never considered: ground troops. Walker's voice broadcast across all frequencies. "Attention, citizens of New Haven. We have disabled your orbital defenses. We come not to conquer, but to liberate. Any Imperial military who surrender will be treated fairly." Governor White watched in shock as human dropships descended toward the capital city. The Imperial garrison rushed to defend, expecting an easy victory against primitive warriors. They were wrong. Human soldiers wore powered armor that made them faster and stronger than any Imperial warrior. Their weapons adapted to Imperial shields, changing frequency until they could pierce any defense. But most surprising was their behavior. "Sir," a breathless Imperial officer reported to White, "the humans. They're protecting our civilians. They're helping people evacuate from the combat zones. They're even providing medical aid to our wounded." This was not how the Empire fought wars. This was not what they had expected. Within hours, the capital was under human control. Governor White found himself sitting across from a human commander named Wilson, drinking Earth coffee. "Why?" White asked, confused by the human's kindness. "Why show mercy? The Empire wouldn't." Wilson smiled. "That's exactly why we're different. We're not here to destroy. We're here to show there's a better way." Across Imperial space, similar scenes played out. Human forces struck at key worlds, but always with the same pattern. Military targets were hit hard, but civilians were protected. Surrendering forces were treated with respect. On the Imperial capital, the High Command was in complete disarray. Intelligence Officer Mark presented his latest report to the Council. "The humans are advancing on 3 fronts," he explained. "But they're not just winning battles. They're winning hearts and minds. 7 Imperial worlds have already declared their support for Earth." "Impossible." Grand Marshal West slammed his fist on the table. "No Empire citizen would betray us." "They're not betraying the Empire," Mark replied quietly. "They're choosing a different future. The humans are offering something we never did: choice." A junior officer burst into the chamber. "Sirs, we've lost contact with the Beta Sector fleet. The humans, they're using our own captured ships against us. But they're faster, stronger somehow. They've improved our own technology." The council chamber erupted in chaos again. Thousands of years of Imperial doctrine was crumbling before an enemy that didn't just fight differently. They fought differently. Back on New Haven, Governor White watched human engineers working alongside Imperial technicians, sharing knowledge, improving systems that hadn't changed in centuries. Perhaps, he thought, watching humans and Imperials working together, defeat isn't always a bad thing. Perhaps sometimes it leads to progress. The war was far from over, but the galaxy was changing. Humanity wasn't just defeating the Empire. They were transforming it, one world at a time. And they were just getting started. The Imperial Palace shook with the force of Grand Marshal West's anger. "Launch everything, every ship, every fighter. I want our entire fleet mobilized. 10,000 Imperial warships gathered above the capital world. It was the Empire's full might, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. The ships stretched as far as the eye could see, their golden hulls reflecting the light of the three suns. Intelligence officer Mark watched from his office window with dread. They still don't understand, he whispered to himself. Numbers alone won't save us. On the flagship Imperial Destiny, West addressed his commanders. The humans have gone too far. They've taken our worlds, corrupted our people with their ideas of choice and freedom. Today, we crush them completely. But on Earth, in the deep underground command center, Admiral Walker watched the Imperial fleet gathering with calm interest. Captain Reed stood beside him, reviewing final preparations. They've committed their entire fleet, Reed noted, just as we predicted. Walker nodded. Pride makes them predictable. Is the dimensional drive ready? Yes, sir. All ships are equipped. The Empire won't know what hit them. The human fleet appeared before the Imperial Armada, seemingly outmatched. Only 500 ships faced the Empire's 10,000. West laughed when he saw them. See how few they are, he broadcasted to his fleet. Today we end this human plague. Walker's response was simple. We gave you every chance to change. Remember that. Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear apart. The human ships began to flicker and shift, seeming to exist in multiple places at once. The dimensional drive, humanity's greatest secret weapon, was activated. Sir, West's sensor officer screamed. The human ships, they're attacking from different dimensions. The same human ship could now strike from above, below, and beside an Imperial vessel simultaneously. The Empire's perfect formation meant nothing when their enemies could attack from directions that shouldn't exist. Impossible. West watched in horror as his ships exploded, unable to defend against attacks coming from dimensional spaces their sensors couldn't even detect. No species has mastered dimensional warfare. Walker's voice came through again. The Empire thought they knew everything about space warfare, but space isn't just 3 dimensions. We learned to fight in 11 of them. The battle became a slaughter. Imperial ships fired at enemies that were simultaneously there and not there. Human vessels would appear from impossible angles, strike devastatingly, and vanish into dimensional folds the Empire couldn't comprehend. In the Imperial Palace, Mark received desperate messages from the fleet. He translated one for the panicking council members. They're everywhere and nowhere. Our weapons pass through them, but theirs hit us. They're breaking the laws of physics themselves. The Imperial formation shattered. Ships began retreating in panic, but the humans had positioned dimensional barriers across their escape routes. They weren't just fighting in normal space. They were controlling the battlefield across multiple realities. 3 hours later, half the Imperial fleet was destroyed. 3,000 ships had surrendered. The rest were trapped, their mighty weapons useless against an enemy they couldn't properly target. West stood on his burning bridge, watching his mighty armada fall apart. "What are you?" he transmitted to Walker. "We're human," came the reply. "We warned you to run. We warned you to change. You chose this fight." In the Imperial Palace, the Council received Walker's terms. "Surrender now. Reform your empire. Join us as equals in building a better galaxy. This is your last chance." Mark looked at the terrified council members and spoke. "We should take the offer. The humans could have destroyed us completely. Instead, they're still offering peace." As the council debated, the remains of the Imperial fleet hung motionless in space, surrounded by human ships that flickered between dimensions like ghosts. The Empire's greatest flotilla had been defeated not just by superior technology, but by humans thinking in ways the Empire never imagined possible. The age of Imperial dominance was over. The era of humanity had begun. The Imperial Palace, a structure that had stood unchanged for 10,000 years, was burning. Not from human weapons, but from riots in the streets below. The common people had seen their mighty fleet broken, and their faith in imperial power had shattered with it. Inside the great council chamber, chaos reigned. Half the council seats stood empty. Their occupants had already fled to human-controlled worlds. Those who remained were divided, shouting at each other across the crystal hall. "We must fight to the last ship." Military Counselor Hill slammed his fist on the table. "The Empire cannot surrender." "With what ships?" Intelligence Officer Mark stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Half our fleet is destroyed. 3,000 ships have surrendered. Our best worlds have joined the humans. It's over." Through the tall windows, they could see human ships appearing and disappearing in the sky above the capital. The dimensional drives made them look like stars blinking in and out of existence, a constant reminder of humanity's power. In the palace's war room, Grand Marshal West refused to accept defeat. "We still have planetary defenses. We can resist." A junior officer interrupted with new reports. "Sir, the human ships, they're not attacking. They're broadcasting videos across all channels. They're showing their worlds, their way of life. They're showing how our surrendered worlds are thriving under joint leadership." On every screen across the capital, images played of Imperial citizens working alongside humans. Former Imperial worlds now had better technology, more freedom, and happier people. The Empire's own citizens were choosing humanity's way. Governor White, now a willing ally of Earth, appeared on all channels. "My fellow Imperials, I've seen the truth. The humans don't want to destroy us. They want to help us grow. My world is proof. Look at what we've achieved together." The broadcast showed New Haven's transformed cities. Imperial technology merged with human innovation. Children from both species playing together in parks. Progress that the Empire had forbidden for millennia was now happening in days. In orbit, Admiral Walker received a transmission from the palace. It was from the younger Imperial Council members, led by Mark. "We want to talk, not about surrender, but about change." Walker's response surprised them. "We'll meet on neutral ground. Bring your concerns. We'll address them all." The meeting took place on a space station between the fleets. Walker came with only a small guard, showing trust. Mark and the young council members found him drinking coffee, relaxed and ready to listen. "Your power is incredible," Mark said. "You could destroy our capital in minutes. Why don't you?" Walker smiled. "Because that's not who we are. Humanity learned long ago that real victory isn't about destruction. It's about building something better together." As they talked, more news arrived. Imperial worlds were declaring independence from the old council. But instead of joining Earth directly, they were asking to be part of a new alliance. Humans and Imperials working together as equals. Back in the palace, the old guard was losing control. West tried to order a final suicide attack, but his officers refused. They'd seen enough death. The Empire's iron discipline had finally broken. "Don't you see?" West shouted at his silent officers. "They've corrupted everything. Our perfect order." "No," one young officer replied. "They showed us that perfect order was stagnation. Change is necessary. Change is good." By nightfall, the riots had turned to celebrations. The Imperial Palace's gates were opened for the first time in centuries. Common citizens walked the halls their rulers had kept private for millennia. The Empire wasn't falling, it was transforming. Instead of destruction, humanity had brought revolution. A peaceful one, built on hope and progress rather than fear and control. Walker stood on his ship, watching the capital's lights below. Captain Reed joined him at the window. "Victory through peace," Reed mused. "Not exactly what they expected from us." "The best victories," Walker replied, "are the ones where everyone wins in the end." The old empire was dying, but something new and better was being born from its ashes. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't winning the war. It was winning the peace that followed. 1 year after the imperial capital opened its gates, the Great Hall of Unity was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. The massive building, a mix of imperial grandeur and human innovation, stood where the old imperial palace once towered. Admiral Walker, now wearing ceremonial clothes instead of his military uniform, stood at the central podium. Beside him, Intelligence Officer Mark, who had helped bring peace, smiled at the gathered crowd. Humans and Imperials sat together, no longer divided by old hatreds. 1 year ago, Walker began, we were enemies. Today we gather as friends, as partners, as equals in the greatest alliance our galaxy has ever known. The screens behind him showed images of the incredible changes. Imperial ships now carried dimensional drives, their crews a mix of both species. Human AI systems worked with Imperial quantum computers, creating technology neither side could have built alone. In the audience, former Grand Marshal West sat quietly. His time in prison had ended early. The humans believed in forgiveness. He watched as his grandson played with a human child nearby, both children equally amazed by holographic toys that combine both cultures' technologies. The Empire taught us something valuable. Walker continued. They showed us how easy it is to become trapped by pride, to stop growing, to fear change. We humans learned from their mistake. Captain Reed, now Ambassador Reed, presented the latest achievements. Imperial worlds had grown more in 1 year than in the previous 1,000. Human creativity, mixed with imperial efficiency, had solved problems neither civilization could fix alone. Our ships now explore unknown space together, Reed announced. Our scientists work side by side. Our children grow up knowing both histories, learning from both our triumphs and our mistakes. Governor White, representing the transformed outer worlds, stood to speak next. A year ago, I thought surrender meant defeat. Instead, it meant freedom. Freedom to grow, to change, to become better than we ever were under the old empire. The new Academy of Science and Technology displayed its achievements. Humans taught Imperials about thinking differently, breaking old rules. Imperials taught humans their advanced mathematics and ancient wisdom. Together, they reached heights neither could have imagined. In orbit above, the new Joint Fleet patrolled. Their ships could now travel through 15 dimensions, not just 11. Imperial precision combined with human creativity had made them unbeatable. But they were peacekeepers now, not conquerors. Mark took the podium next. For 10,000 years, we thought we were perfect. The humans showed us that perfection isn't about staying the same. It's about always becoming better. The ceremony reached its peak as Walker and the new Imperial Council signed the final treaties. The old empire was officially transformed into the Galactic Alliance. All worlds equal, all peoples free to choose their path. We warned them to run, Walker said quietly to Mark as they watched the celebrations. But I'm glad they didn't. Look what we built instead. Mark nodded. You could have destroyed us. Most conquerors would have. That's why we won. Walker replied. We didn't want to conquer. We wanted to grow. Together. As night fell on the capital world, fireworks lit up the sky. A human tradition the Imperials had come to love. In the streets, people celebrated. Children who would never know war played games that used dimensional shifts for fun. Scientists from both worlds shared discoveries over drinks. The old Imperial banner was lowered one final time. In its place rose the flag of the Galactic Alliance, a symbol showing human and Imperial hands joined together among the stars. Walker stood on a balcony, watching the celebration below. Captain Reed joined him, carrying 2 glasses of earth wine. Think they'll remember to thank us for defeating them? Reed asked with a smile. Walker laughed. They already do. Every day they're free to choose their own path. They thank us, not for beating them, but for showing them a better way. Below them, the city glowed with new life. The rigid perfection of the empire was gone, replaced by vibrant chaos and endless possibility. Humanity hadn't just won a war, they had changed the galaxy forever. And this was only the beginning.